attention to Anitra Gunn, 23 years old, leaving a Valentine's Day party with friends in Fort Valley, Georgia. She has less than 2 hours left to live because DeMarcus Little, 22, U.S. Army Sergeant, and her ex-boyfriend is watching, waiting, planning. On this day, Anitra dreams of graduating college and starting her career. On this day, DeMarcus decides that if he cannot have her, no one will. This is the story of 48 hours that changed everything.
But as far as it just hurt me to see him come in the shackles like that, like he's a criminal. My son's never done anything in the morning.
Anitra Gunn had one defining quality that everyone remembered: her resilience. After losing her mother as a child, she had built herself back up, refusing to let tragedy define her. Now, in the winter of 2020, the Fort Valley State University senior was weeks away from graduation with her agriculture degree. She worked part-time as a server at the 1836 Restaurant and Lounge, juggling shifts between classes, lining up job interviews for after graduation. Her father, Christopher, who had raised Anitra and her younger brother alone in Atlanta after their mother's death, spoke to her nearly every day. She had plans, she had dreams. She had no idea that her Valentine's Day celebration would be her last night alive. On paper, DeMarcus Little was everything a parent hoped for.
He was raised the right way. He's not violent, never been in a fight, never having a criminal background. He's a good kid, a good soldier, serving our country proudly.
Army Sergeant at just 22, promoted in only 3 years. Unit Supply Specialist stationed at Fort Eisenhower in Augusta, formerly known as Fort Gordon. He grew up in Fort Valley, raised by his father and stepmother after losing his own mother young. He had 2 sisters he adored, a tight-knit family, and a promising military career ahead of him. But beneath that surface lived someone else entirely. Someone whose love felt like ownership. Someone whose jealousy burned hotter than any devotion. Someone who sent messages to Anitra's friends offering $200 to confront men she might be seeing. Someone who slashed her tires in the night. Someone who threw bricks through her windows at 3 a.m. when another man stayed over, even though they were broken up. The relationship had been volatile for months. Anitra's friends saw it. Her best friend, Sierra Stewart, hated him, knew he was trouble, watched as Anitra tried again and again to break free. What they could not know was that DeMarcus Little had already decided if Anitra would not be his, she would be no one's. On February 13th, Anitra attended a house party with girlfriends. Around 11 at night, she left with her friend Tracy King, DeMarcus, and his close friend, Javon Abraham. The group went to DeMarcus's home for a few hours. Past 2 a.m, Javon dropped Anitra and DeMarcus at her house on West Church Street so she could get her car, a 2013 white Chevy Cruze. The couple separated from their friends then, stopping at a Waffle House before heading to the house on Chestnut Hill Road where DeMarcus's aunt lived. They would spend the night there. What happened in those early morning hours would remain between those walls until DeMarcus himself confessed days later. But the next morning, Valentine's Day, something changed. Anitra had a job interview scheduled for 9 o'clock. She never made it. She never left that house alive. Sierra Stewart woke late on Valentine's Day to a series of messages from Anitra's phone. They started normally, "Happy Valentine's Day, greetings between best friends." Then the messages turned strange. Texts claimed Anitra was looking to meet up with someone she called Dude, implying it was someone other than DeMarcus. Anitra was in an on-again, off-again relationship with the sergeant, but her message suggested someone new. Sierra supported her friend. She was not a fan of DeMarcus Little. He was trouble, and their relationship was unstable. Everyone knew that. Over the next few hours, Sierra grew increasingly concerned. By midday, she received a call from their mutual friend, David Howard, who everyone knew as Scoot. Had she heard from Anitra? He had also been receiving bizarre messages from her phone that morning, and DeMarcus claimed he was no longer with her and had no idea where she was. Something was not right. Sierra phoned Christopher Gunn in Atlanta. Before Christopher left Atlanta, he requested a welfare check on his daughter's home. Fort Valley police found no one at the house on West Church Street. Anitra's white Chevy Cruze was also missing. By that time, the strange messages from Anitra's phone had ceased. They began with texts to Scoot around 8 a.m, messages to Sierra about an unknown man between 10 and 11, and then silence. Messages from concerned family and friends came in, but no responses were received. When Christopher arrived in Fort Valley, he formally filed a missing persons report. A task force formed immediately, consisting of Fort Valley Police, Peach County Sheriff's deputies, and the GBI, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. No stone would be left unturned, the sheriff declared.
This is the last place she was seen Thursday night about 11:30.
Okay.
The aunt confirmed she was here with her boyfriend. It's the last place she was seen.
They would put together all the pieces and seek justice for Anitra Gunn. Anitra's last confirmed location was DeMarcus's aunt's house on Chestnut Hill Road. The two had spent the night of February 13th there. He was the last person to see Anitra before she disappeared. Due to this, DeMarcus Little became a suspect to the media and the public immediately.
God, he the judge and the jury.
When you're innocent, you stand.
You guys think he's innocent?
Yes, no doubt. We know
It's a fact, baby.
very close relationship with her. She was just like a niece to me.
22-year-old DeMarcus Little was picked up and brought in for questioning. His vehicle, a 2019 black Toyota Corolla with red pinstripes, was towed for forensic examination. DeMarcus told police he last saw Anitra leaving around 11 in the morning on the 14th. She told him she had a job interview, so he assumed that was her destination when she left. But Anitra's interview was scheduled for 9 o'clock. Had she left when DeMarcus claimed, she would have already been 2 hours late. The timeline did not make sense. As investigators spoke with those closest to Anitra, they learned the relationship had been volatile for months. This view was not shared by those close to DeMarcus. His family insisted he was innocent. They knew it as a fact.
But it just hurt me to see him come in shackles like that, like he's a criminal. My son's never done anything anymore. He was raised the right way. He's not violent, never been in a fight, never having a criminal background. He's a good kid, a good soldier, serving our country proudly.
She could sympathize with Anitra's family. She said, truly she could. She had daughters, one even in college. If something like that happened to her daughter, she would be devastated. But her son did not do this. What his family could not see, what they refused to believe, was the person DeMarcus became behind closed doors. The messages he sent, the threats he made, the violence that had been building for months. Anitra's white Chevy Cruze was located only a few blocks from her house, its front bumper missing. There was mud and other debris stuck to the tires. Just the day before, Javon had collected his friend DeMarcus from a location nearby and pointed out the car. "Isn't that Anitra's car?" he asked. DeMarcus blew him off. "Of course it was not," he said. Her wallet and keys were inside the vehicle. Curiously, her cell phone was not. Processing of the car found DeMarcus's finger and palm prints inside and on the trunk. An examination of his vehicle similarly returned DNA from Anitra. Given that the two had been romantically linked for months, these results were not surprising. What was unexpected was DeMarcus's claim, made 24 hours into the search, that he just remembered Anitra had accidentally shared her phone location with him the day before. He said her device had pinged not far from her home, at a location on South Camellia Boulevard. When Officer Whitehead checked the device for this information, however, he found that was not the case. Her phone had actually pinged roughly 5 minutes further south on Carver Drive. There, tucked into the end of a drainage pipe, police retrieved Anitra's cell phone. The county, city, and state task force continued their search, spanning from Chestnut Drive through rain and shine. When weather turned rough, they kept helicopters grounded, but deputies continued navigating dense areas of woodland on foot. A Peach County Sheriff's deputy was patrolling the area when he spotted a path leading off the main roadway, which appeared to have been disturbed by a vehicle driving toward the trees. He got out of his car and explored the path on foot. A few minutes into the walk, there were more indications of a vehicle swiping nearby trees and damaging vegetation. Under a light covering of tree limbs and other brush, the deputy discovered the remains of a young woman.
About 150 yards off the roadway, he found the piece of the car, part of the car piece that we've been looking for. Found Miss Gunn laying very close to part of that front bumper.
It had been poorly concealed amongst the trees. Near the deceased were damaged car parts, namely part of a bumper from what appeared to be a 2013 white Chevy Cruze. The sheriff's announcement was blunt. When asked if they had a person of interest, He responded with common sense clarity.
I think it's pretty common sense who our person of interest is.
Can you say it
And
though
who
out
is
loud?
that?
It's the boyfriend. I mean, we've talked to him 3 times.
An autopsy found that Anitra had passed away from asphyxiation. There were also indications she had been struck at least once in the head, and that her body had likely been dragged into the position where she was found. On Wednesday, February 19th, only a few days after Anitra was located, DeMarcus Little was arrested. However, he was not at that stage charged with murder. Property was damaged at Anitra's house roughly 2 weeks before she was killed. It was on this charge that he was arraigned. At about 3 a.m. on February 5th, Anitra and Scoot, who was staying over, were both awoken by a loud, shattering noise. Initially believing one of the pets had caused the disturbance, they ignored it. The next morning, after Scoot walked home, Anitra called police to report that tires on her car had been slashed and bricks had been thrown through 2 windows of the house. She told law enforcement she did not know who could have done it, though it was actually the second time someone had pierced her tires in the night. DeMarcus eventually admitted to police that he had slashed Anitra's tires and thrown bricks at her house. He had reacted in rage when he discovered she had a man staying overnight. Throughout this, he maintained his innocence of the murder. The Army sergeant was offered a $10,000 bond and release with an ankle monitor, but he would be charged with malice murder only hours later before he could be released from county jail. He was not alone. His longtime friend, Javon Abraham, was arrested as well on 2 counts of giving false statements to law enforcement and 1 count of concealing a death. When DeMarcus went to trial in March 2022 at Peach County Courthouse, it was his former friend, the one he claimed was like a brother, who became the star witness. Javon told the jury that on the afternoon of Sunday, February 16th, he and DeMarcus left church together and went for a drive. While in the car, DeMarcus freely confessed that he had ended Anitra's life in the night. He had poured his heart out to her, DeMarcus said. He told her they were soulmates, how much he loved her.
Trying to tell her how I feel about how much I love her and stuff. And he was like, she ended up laughing in my face.
He said he blacked out. The next morning, he disposed of her remains in the woods. Javon recounted the chilling details.
When he was like, after that, he just grabbed her and started choking her.
At first, she fought. Then she stopped fighting. He felt like she wanted to be home, wanted to go with her mother who had died when Anitra was still a child. The morning of Valentine's Day, while Anitra lay dead, someone was using her phone. David Scoot Howard, the barber who lived a few doors down from Anitra on West Church Street, needed his second cell phone for work. He messaged Anitra asking if she could look for it, thinking he might have left it at her house the night before. The response he received was bizarre.
When you're getting this message, what were you thinking?
This ain't her.
The text from Anitra's phone said to send his location and she would drive over to him. Scoot testified that his home was so close to Anitra's that if he stood at the end of his driveway, he could clearly see Anitra's front door. She knew where he lived. She certainly did not need to drive. When he tried calling, she did not pick up. Messages stated she just could not talk at the moment. Then, to add confusion, the following message seemed to be trying to break up with him. That was fine, he said, but the two were not involved. They had only hung out a couple of times. He hesitated to even categorize them as friends. When the person with her phone asked again for his address, he responded that he wanted no part in whatever was going on. By this time, Scoot was standing outside his house. The person with Anitra's phone said they were on their way and to wait out front. He watched as a 2019 black Toyota Corolla with red pinstripes circled the block 5 or maybe 6 times. Concerned, he messaged Sierra Stewart and texted over the license plate number. Police would later match this tag to DeMarcus Little's vehicle. Cell phone location data became the prosecution's most powerful weapon. Both Javon's device and DeMarcus's phone corresponded to the movements in Javon's version of events. This data did not correspond to the story DeMarcus Little would tell the jury. District Attorney Don Baskin grilled DeMarcus on the inconsistencies. Location data placed him traveling from his aunt's home at 420 Chestnut to where Anitra was found off Greer Road at the county line on Valentine's Day. DeMarcus testified that his transaction data and location tracking on either side of the hour he was in the woods was accurate, but he was never in the area where Anitra was found dead, he insisted. The exchange was brutal. Every single cell location after the time he claimed Anitra left showed his exact whereabouts, DeMarcus admitted. Those same cell locations showed him at 103 driving on Tanglewood Road headed toward 30 Road. Is that correct? Baskin asked. No, DeMarcus replied. So his phone went offline at that point? That day, I don't know where I went, he said. Those same cell locations, which were accurate from noon until 1 and from 2:20 for the rest of the day, showed him in the woods off Greer Road. They don't show you there? Baskin pressed. I wasn't in the woods, DeMarcus insisted. Do those cell locations, which you just testified were absolutely accurate, show you in the woods off Greer Road? Those are inaccurate, he said. Just those? Yes. Baskin's final question cut through the courtroom. So your phone is lying? Javon recounted how they drove out to Greer Road at the Peach County-Crawford County line where Anitra had been left. There, he saw her body. In a state of shock, he refused to get out of the vehicle. DeMarcus retrieved part of the Chevy Cruze's front bumper, which sat nearby, and asked Javon to help him push it into the trunk. They drove it further out and disposed of it in a ditch off another roadway. That portion of the bumper was eventually located in the area where Javon stated it would be, further corroborating his story. The prosecutor painted a devastating picture.
And you got back in Anitra's car and you drove it over ditches and trees, causing the bumper to fall off, causing everything else to break apart, and you dumped your soulmate like garbage in the middle of the woods, didn't you, sir?
No, ma'am.
Just like your phone said you did.
Then you drove back down her beat-up car with a missing bumper and a missing wheel well. And you abandoned her car just like you abandoned her, didn't you? No, ma'am. Just like your phone said you did. Days at trial were spent reading the couple's messages exchanged over months leading up to her death. Anitra described him as an evil, manipulative person. She was tired of DeMarcus's threats and abuse. She tried to distance herself from him, but over and over again, he worked his way back in. His messages repeatedly accused Anitra of being with another man. On November 1st, Anitra wrote that they should stop speaking to each other altogether. She told him that every time they talked, she ended up being manipulated. Days later, DeMarcus threatened to harm himself. He blamed her for pushing him to that point, then went silent for hours as Anitra reached out, concerned for his welfare. Eventually, he replied, telling her his attempt to end it all did not work. But his manipulative tactics did. Within days of this alleged attempt, the line of communication between the two reopened. On Anitra's birthday in November, he told her he was sparing the man he believed she was going out with that night. The two had broken up at that point. Nonetheless, DeMarcus threatened any man he believed she was spending time with. He even sent her a screenshot of a message offering someone $200 to harm Anitra's alleged date. We're going to have problems if you go out with him, he wrote. OMM, on my mama. At times, he threatened her life directly, stating that his mercy had limits after he accused her again of texting with another man. The jury deliberated for about 3 hours. They had 3 counts to consider: malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault. If the jury concluded that DeMarcus had killed Anitra in a rage, they could apply the second count, appropriate if the killer acted without intent. Either murder count had the potential to carry the same sentence.
Count 1, malice murder, read the jury find DeMarcus Devontae Little not guilty. For count 2, felony murder, read the jury find DeMarcus Devontae Little guilty. Count 3, aggravated assault, read the jury find DeMarcus Devontae Little guilty.
Speaking publicly following the verdict, Assistant District Attorney Don Baskin described the concerns the state had held when selecting jurors. At the time, there was worry that some in the jury pool would be unable to place blame for what occurred squarely at the feet of the abuser. The victim had indeed returned to him on numerous occasions despite his progressively more volatile behavior. This is where the prosecution faced their greatest challenge. Not the evidence, not the timeline, not even DeMarcus's shifting stories. The challenge was the image his family painted of him. A soldier, a good kid, raised right, never violent. No one could say anything bad about him in 22 years on this earth, his stepmother insisted. But that image was an illusion. Parents often do not know who their children truly are when they enter society. They see what they want to see. The son who comes home for holidays, who wears a uniform, who calls regularly. They do not see the messages sent at 3 a.m, the tires slashed in parking lots, the windows shattered with bricks, the $200 offers to hurt strangers, the threats that escalate from words to violence to murder. The prosecution knew this cognitive dissonance would be their obstacle. How do you convince people that the clean-cut soldier, the man with no criminal record, the son who made his family proud, could take the life of the woman he claimed to love? Baskin described the process like a frog in a pot of slowly boiling water. Had Anitra been thrown right into the abuse, she would have jumped right out. But as time went on, the manipulation became an incremental cycle, finally escalating to very serious and violent threats that would have otherwise been enough for her to get out and seek help. The picture that we wanted to paint was that despite the frustrating nature of domestic violence, especially from those of us sitting on the outside, is to never give up, to keep fighting, to remind the individual who's in the cycle that they're in a dangerous pot of water and that it's going to come to a boil, Baskin said. The jury saw through the illusion. They saw past the uniform, past the family's pleas, past the claims that no one could say anything bad about this man. They saw the evidence, the phone records, the confession to Javon, the manipulation tactics, the escalating threats, the remains hidden in the woods like refuse. The state requested what they deemed the only appropriate sentence for Anitra Gunn's murder: life without the possibility of parole. The judge agreed. In March 2022, DeMarcus Little was sent to prison for the rest of his natural life. Anitra Gunn was 23 years old when she died. She was weeks from graduation. She had job interviews lined up. She had a father who loved her, friends who tried to warn her, dreams of a future that would never come. She tried to leave DeMarcus multiple times. She called him evil. She recognized the manipulation. But the cycle of abuse had trapped her in water that kept getting hotter, degree by degree, until it was too late. DeMarcus Little was a soldier who looked perfect on paper. He was also a killer who believed ownership was love, who could not accept that Anitra was not his to control, who decided that if he could not have her, no one would. His family's belief in his innocence, their insistence that he could never harm anyone, shows how little we sometimes know the people we think we understand completely. The case of Anitra Gunn is a cautionary tale, one that resonates with anyone who has seen these warning signs before. The possessiveness disguised as love, the jealousy masked as caring, the threats dismissed as empty words, until they are not empty anymore. Until a promising young woman is found in the woods on a February afternoon, her dreams ended by the hands of someone who claimed he loved her. This is the story of Anitra Gunn, a survivor of childhood tragedy who rebuilt herself into a strong, determined young woman with a bright future ahead. And this is the story of how that future was stolen by someone who wore a uniform, made his family proud, and convinced himself that murder was justified because she dared to laugh when he poured his heart out. Remember her name. Remember what happened. And remember that the person everyone else sees is not always who someone truly is behind closed doors.